So I'd show up to these happy hours and I'd be like, I do not want to be here. Like, this is the last thing I want to do. And I would just set goals and I'd be like, I need to talk with and make two connections that fit into like this type of individual. And then once I make two, I can go. And so sometimes you just have to make goals. And then when I would do that, I would be able to get like a fish taco on the way home. So I set goals and gave myself a reward. Right. And so then once you start building connections, I would then move it to, I'm going to go make two new connections and I'm going to make two reconnections. And then once I started building a few relationships, I'd go to these events and be like, all right, I know 3 people here. I'm going to go stand next to the people that I know. And if you've done a good job building those connections, they then start introducing you to everybody.
Welcome to DoubleHelix, where everything is connected. Hey there, awesome viewers and listeners. I'm your host, Mark Marrott, and on this show, we're going to dive into the fascinating web of connections that shape our health and our lives, from our physical and psychological well-being to our emotional and spiritual growth. We'll explore how these connections, whether they're with the people around us or in intricate networks within ourselves, all the way down to our DNA, and how that can transform our lives for the better. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up for episodes that resonate with you. Let's get connected. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited to have you. My name is Mark Marrott, and I'm the host of DoubleHelix. Today, I'm really excited to have with us Logan Wilkes, who's the CEO of TRUSS, TRUSS, there in Salt Lake City. Logan is a prominent business leader and entrepreneur based in Lehi, Utah, recognized for his strategic vision in transforming organizations and fostering community engagement. Logan received a degree in public relations from BYU, and with a career spanning over a decade in public relations, corporate leadership, and experiential marketing, Logan has established himself as a key figure in Utah's business ecosystem. How does that ring, Logan?
I should have you introduce me more often. That sounds better than it should.
Well, we all kind of have those moments. I'm like, wow, okay, if I would have written that, it would have probably not been a much more mellow, right? If it would have been about myself. So I totally understand.
Yeah.
So tell me, Logan, I'm just curious, as we take a look, we want to talk about the connections that you have. And in reality, from where you go from with TRUSS, tell me a little bit about TRUSS and what you folks do. And then if we can talk, really, we want to obviously tie into the importance of those connections, because that's something that TRUSS focuses on in that network arena for the business world.
Yeah. So what is TRUSS, right? At our core,
Right.
We are a membership-based organization. At our core, we are a networking group. So our job is to connect high-level CEOs and business owners to help them create meaningful connections to then produce growth and opportunity. If you look at our name, TRUSS, when we were creating TRUSS, the reason why we picked the name TRUSS is in construction, right? TRUSS is a triangular structure used in architecture that when you assemble individual parts in the form or shape of a truss, it can bear more weight. We use that metaphor with our members, that our job is to connect the individual pieces or the individual people that when bonded or connected together, they can bear more weight and achieve more things. So we facilitate events, and our goal is to facilitate good enough events or desirable enough events or unique enough events to get these busy CEOs to slow down and to come so we can connect them with each other.
And if I remember correctly, you obviously your main market is, I would assume, is Utah, since you're based out of there, but do you do that elsewhere outside of Utah as well?
Yes, and no. So we have, of our membership base, about 95% is local to the Wasatch Front. We do have about 5% of our members that have a desire to connect with the Utah business market. So they travel in for our events or they travel with us to events. sometimes people think we're all over the world because we take people all over the world. But where people reside is mainly Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is you say you take people all over the world? Are these similar to like networking trips where you're going to be going to, you know, Norway or France or wherever, that kind of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So, right, our goal is to get the busiest people out there to slow down and give us their time. So, in order to do that, we have to entice them with overwater bungalows at the Four Seasons in Maldives.
A
And
really,
so,
really cool place to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
really, really cool places. And so we do local events. We do date nights, lunches, happy hours. But then about 10 to 12 times a year, we will go on trips. These can range from 3 days to a week long. They can range
Wow.
from Palm Springs to, you mentioned Norway. We were in Norway last year. We'll be in the south of France next year. Our next one, I leave in a week and a half to Peru to go to Machu Picchu. So,
Oh,
yeah,
that would be a cool trip.
I'm really excited about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a pretty amazing, amazing spot to go to. So tell me if you can. I mean, you started this business. How did you go from a PR degree from Brigham Young University? And what was your path like to get to where you are, what you're doing now? What was the path you went through?
Dumb luck. Um, the
We
so
all have those moments.
so I started BYU as a music dance theater major. I was also a
Okay.
member of the BYU Young Ambassadors. So I share that because that gave me a broad base of events, theater production, event production, and then the Young Ambassadors gave me an introduction to group and international travel. And
Oh, true.
so during my time in school, I was privileged to go to China, Australia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and all over the United States. And so, and while I was traveling, and I say China, while I was traveling, I got to meet all sorts of cool people all over the world and got to see how different experiences could accelerate connection and relationship. And so, to be honest with you, my junior year, I realized I did not want to go be a Broadway star or didn't have the talents to be a Broadway star. And the business school wouldn't accept me because I had too many credits. So the PR program was the closest thing to business without a credit limit
I
for
love it.
me.
Sorry, you've got
Uh,
too much.
yeah, so I was too seasoned or veteran or experienced. So I finished up in PR. And I think the reason why I like PR is that as we traveled, we got to meet ambassadors, diplomats, right? I was a representative of BYU
Yeah.
as we went and spoke at different places. And that, back in those days, kind of right as social media was starting to come out, that's still what public relations was. It was a lot of that. But now public relations totally changed with social media and the internet. So I graduated and I got a job. I worked for 6 months for free at a local startup that never started up, and then I needed a job. And I reached out to my network and said, hey, who should I talk to? And a buddy of mine said, hey, I know a guy named Jeff Rust who you kind of remind me of. So I went and talked to Jeff. He was running an organization at the time called Corporate Alliance.
Yeah, Jeff's a good guy.
Yeah, he took a chance on me. He hired me at $12 an hour for 2 months as a temp receptionist. And I took that job over some other sales jobs because I figured Corporate Alliance is this cool networking organization. Worst case scenario, I'll meet a bunch of really cool people over the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will help me network into my next career. But what ended up happening is I ended up staying on. And we grew and ran Corporate Alliance until I became the CEO in 2018. We sold
Okay.
Corporate Alliance in 2019 and created TRUSS, Jeff and I, in 2019.
Okay. So yeah, I remember going to the Corporate Alliance events when you guys were down in South Provo, down in the East Bay
Yeah.
area. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we were there
that
in
was
that
pretty cool.
facility till about 2018.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember going there, a couple
Yeah.
of times. So So tell me a little bit about your networking. I mean, you talk about networking side and that connections and you knew that you were going for which amazingly $12 an hour for 2 months, so you could build and increase those connections. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to those things. Because so often we spend our lives in a transactional world, not in a relational world.
Yeah. So I'm not the best networker in the world, but I've been privileged over the last 15 years to produce networking events and watch people network. I've had a front row seat at people who have
Right.
failed and people who have succeeded. And I think the things of those that succeed and do really well is first is their intent. Why are they there?
Right.
And it is clear and it is palpable. Is your intent to build relationships or is your intent to sell? And having the
There's
intent,
a big difference. Yeah,
there's a
there's a
huge
big difference.
difference.
Yeah, huge
And,
difference.
and there's nothing wrong with trying to sell something. We all live by selling something.
Right.
We have to sell things in order to live. But what is your first intent? Is your first priority to build a relationship or is your first priority to sell a product and move on? That's why a lot of networking events get a bad rap. It's like, oh, people are there just there to sell. Or historically,
I
they're
think
like,
we've
oh,
all been to those kind of
we've all
events.
been to those.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
where
Yeah,
they don't mix. And unless somebody needs your exact product at that time and is so desperate that they can't wait and is so unconnected that they don't know anybody else in the world that has that product, they'll buy it. That list is pretty small. And so number one is their intent, right?
yep.
Why are you there? And then just, I think, intent and authenticity, right? Why are you, yeah. I mean, no one wants to do business, date, or be friends with someone that's desperate and someone that's not true to themselves. And so
Right.
it's the same core principles in every area of our life.
Yeah. I remember having a sales gig quite a few years ago, and from the sales side of things and going to all these events, and you can see
Yeah.
those individuals that's the case. And then it was interesting because I went from the sales side of it to another event where I was a speaker at an event. So I
Yeah.
wasn't selling, I was actually a participant, and I was sitting down with a bunch of fellow speakers and presenters and stuff. And to have one of the salespeople that I knew walk up and try and start pitching all of us, and it was a different viewpoint from that was my first inkling of looking at it going, oh wow, this is not the right time, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a different mood, it was a whole different
Awareness.
experience to see both sides of that fence, from within a couple of years of each other. It was an
Yeah.
interesting transition.
So because of what I do, one of the most common calls that we'll get
Uh-huh.
is, hey, I need help networking. I need a job. And it's like,
Right.
well, if you need a job, like if you're out of work, you don't need to network. You need a job,
Right.
right? It's the same thing as like trying to sell something, right? Because like your intent is to get a job, right? So you can use the network that you've already built up to help introduce you to make connections. But it's really hard to make genuine connections when you have a huge need. The intent of
Exactly.
networking is to build up that network so when you have the need, you have resources to call upon,
Yeah.
right? The best guy, like the person that we all call when we need something, is the I've got a guy, right?
Right.
Someone that's like, oh, that's what you need? I've got a guy or I've got a gal, right? I've got someone. That's who we always call when we need something. Networking is to become that individual.
Yeah, exactly. And and I 100% agree with you. There's times I think there's times every one of us fits in that bucket depending on
Mm-hmm.
which group that we're focusing on. Because if you go to the company I currently work for on my day job, I'm one of those guys that everybody goes, "Hey, you need to know how to do something, call Mark," right? But
Yeah.
if you get outside of my arena here, I can think of a particular guy that he's always my go-to, and he actually, his name, and him, it's Joel Stedman.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how many times I've picked up the phone. I've known Joel for a lot of years, and I picked up the phone and go, "Hey Joel, let me run something past you, man." And a great relationship along those lines. And that's what led me to you. Was I had interviewed Joel, and next thing you know, he's like, "You have to call Logan." Awesome. I love it when someone says, "Call this person," right?
Yeah.
So
Joel
he was
Joel is
pointing at you.
amazing at that. Joel is unbelievably genuine and authentic.
Yes. Yeah. And his episode's actually coming out on Monday.
Okay, cool.
Now, and I'll just say it right out loud right now. I got a new camera. The camera setting was off. I look like I'm fuzzy. I did put a disclaimer at the beginning of the video.
Good.
But the conversation he and I had was a really, really great conversation. And I hope people can tune in for that one that comes out on
Cool.
Monday. But he's one of those, like you talk about, people call him because they just want to talk to him.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? And you've kind of touched a little bit on this when we talk about fostering trust and collaboration in business and things like that. Are there certain things that, you mentioned authenticity? Are there certain things that you're seeing that you go, oh my gosh, yes, they got to have authenticity. There needs to be a purpose behind it. Are there any other things that you're seeing that helps those individuals within TRUSS, within your group of CEOs and executives, that they're able to start seeing that and building that trust together?
I mean, follow through,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Be there. I think the biggest thing that I see people backfire is they meet at an event, they have a great conversation, they make they make commitments or promises or allude to like, oh yeah, let's get together. And
Oh,
then
that's the best one ever.
the other pretty soon it follows up and then like there's no reciprocal. And then they meet 3 months again at another event. Um, I've done networking events in different markets, and some markets are better than others at at following up with what they say.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest pitfall. Is like being like, yeah, let's get together for lunch, and you can walk away and be like, that's never happening. So I follow through.
Yeah. And I think that's important. We've all seen that. Um, and I've been a victim of not following through, right? I mean, I think we all have at one point. Something comes up, something happens, and then later you see them and go, yeah, I said we were going to get together, so I understand that. So,
Especially in the networking and connection game, because a lot of time when you're serving somebody else or you're helping out somebody else and introducing them to a connection, like you're putting yourself out there, right?
right.
Right. And so I've had it happen a lot of times because of the position I'm in. Somebody will come to me and be like, hey, I'm coming to these events really hoping to meet these type of people. And I'll go, great, let me help you out. Create an introduction, whether it be text or email, and then had the other person not respond. The person that asks for the introduction not respond. And you're
Yeah.
like, I just put myself out there and vouched for you, and then you didn't back it up. And so that is probably the biggest pitfall I see.
I can think of several instances in my career where I've seen that. Right. And
Yeah,
so I'm just identifying exactly with what you're saying. I go, oh yeah, I remember this happened at one time or another with an individual. So
totally.
yeah. So how do you see building these strong relationships and connections in helping to reduce stress and improve, overall well-being? How does those connections in the professional world help do that?
You know, the business world can be a lonely place, right? Everybody talks about how leadership is lonely at the top. And so And not everybody understands your pain, no matter what your role is or no matter what your job is. We all have a pain, but they're different. And so
Right.
connecting with people in a similar situation or similar stage in life brings tremendous relief um, to where you're at. It brings comfort to where you're at. We just signed up. When a new member signs up with TRUSS, we have a new member onboarding meeting where we basically say, okay, why did you join TRUSS? What can we do to serve you? How will you measure success? Who do you want to meet? And we just met with someone who was rejoining, right? They had sold a business, taken some time off, bought a new business and are rejoining. And we said, hey, why are you coming back? And they said, when we were in Croatia and sat around a table and were able to talk openly and freely, like for the first time in a long time, we felt like we weren't alone. And there's other people that understood what we were going through.
Yeah.
And so you network for the moments when you might need something. And you also network for like comfort and peace of mind.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. As I'm thinking about the leadership opportunities that I've had in my career, I think of it's how many times that, I've been a COO a couple of times in my career with different companies. And it's interesting to go and, when I do have that opportunity to interact with somebody who's dealt with the same pains I've dealt with,
Yeah.
it's I literally just a week ago had a conversation with someone about that, where one particular company I worked with, I spent the first 6 months, even though I'm not an HR guy, right? I was COO. I spent the first 6 months writing HR policies, and it was just painful, right? It's like, okay, they didn't have anything, so let's build this thing out and make it right. And just a week ago, I had a conversation with somebody about writing HR policies, and we both kind of shared oh, wow, that's a lot, right? There's so much time and effort that goes into those things. And it was a nice conversation to have, to just kind of go, okay, someone understands me. So
Yeah.
case in point, my own anecdotal with what you were talking about. Yeah. So tell me real quick, the different relationships that you've had over the years, whether it's professional or personal or anything like that, how have that helped influence the direction that you've gone through and your overall well-being?
Oh, I mean, every step of the way. Part of me was like, that's too broad of a question. Be a little bit more
Okay. All
specific. I
right.
don't know how to
Think
answer
of,
that. Like,
okay. Think of anecdotally, think of a specific individual that helped along those ways. And you
with
don't have to share their
business,
name. You could use business or personal, whichever, but business is great.
you know, how I got my first job was, and then how I got my second job. Um, First job was Erland Peterson, was only the old international vice president at BYU. We toured through Norway with him. I was the president of the Young Ambassadors. He was the BYU representative there traveling with us. We worked a lot together. At the end of the trip, he goes, do you have a job? Because he knew I had just graduated. And I was like, President Peterson, I've been so busy. I don't have a job. I figured I'd
Yeah.
figure that out once this tour was over. And he's like, come to my office next Thursday. And I went to his office and I walked into his office and he says, I got you a job. Meet with him next Tuesday at noon for lunch. I show up with a resume thinking that it was an interview. I'm like, there's no possible way he got me a job. And I walked in and the guy handed me a job offer. Like
Wow.
it wasn't an interview. It was day one on the job. It was him pitching me if I wanted it or not. And that's
Well,
all
there's a
through the
twist.
relationship. It
Yeah, that's
wasn't
a
because of
twist. Yeah.
how good I was. It was because of how trusted Erland Peterson was.
Yeah.
Right? And so having people like him in your life can do anything and everything. Like when we were going through the decision making of selling corporate alignments, I mean, I must have taken 10 to 15 mentors to lunch and just picked their brain. How
Yeah.
do we do this? And being like, hey, there are so many valuable relationships here. Like, changes need to be made. Hard decisions need to be made. Hard conversations have to be made. Not everyone's going to like everything that we do. But
Right.
how do we do what's right? How do we take care of people while taking care of clients, while also taking care of us and our family, and just got unbelievable advice from feedback. Like there, and feedback from mentors at that time. I remember the one that stuck out to me the most is I had made an initial investment in Corporate Alliance. And for me at that time, it was super sizable. It was
Yeah.
a very sizable investment that took me a long time at that period of my life to pay off. And I was looking through everything of the lens of how to save that money. And a mentor looked at me and said, Logan, that money is gone. You have the ability to make way more than that throughout the rest of your life. And if you make
Yeah.
decisions to save that money, you are going to make the wrong choice. He's like, free yourself of that and make decisions with freedom and ease if that never happened. And that flipped my mindset, and all
That's
of a
an
sudden was it
interesting,
like
yeah.
everything it just kind of started to fall into place, right? Because I was trying to hold on to something. I was death gripping this money that like I fought, like I paid for and worked so
Right.
hard to earn, rather than looking forward into future opportunities. And that mentor totally flipped my mindset.
That's a really cool thought. It makes me think of something my wife and I have said over the years. Um, and where, sometimes I'm really good at it and, sometimes I'm not, which falls into
Yeah.
this, grasping and holding on to things. But we've said over the years, and I don't remember where she got it from, but we give to get to give again. That's that continually looking forward mindset. And sometimes I'm really good at it. And sometimes I'm in that, oh, that I can't even think of the right word, the right term. Stephen R. Covey used to talk about it, but it's that scarcity mindset. That's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for, and you fall into that scarcity mindset, and you're like, no, I can't. But yeah, there's so many opportunities that open up when you go, no, we can't. Let's go.
We're all going to be in the scarcity mindset at times throughout our life. It's
Right,
impossible not to. But the easiest way to get out of it is through the help of other people, the perspective of other people, the perspective of people that have gone through it before.
right, exactly. Which is why it's so important, and along those lines, that you had so many mentors. It wasn't just you had one guy to go talk to; you had several that you could go talk to and get that different perspective from a bunch of people.
Well, some of them gave me terrible advice.
Oh, yeah.
But I get like, and it's just, but it's having the right amount and like having enough people to just collect as much feedback as you want and advice, and then kind of make your own decision.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I've got a couple thoughts as we progress in our conversation, and I kind of want to circle back to a thought crossed my mind earlier when we were talking about networking events, and there's two different types. You can be selling something or you can be going to network. There was a third category that came to mind, and that's the wallflowers. It's the people that go there, they want to do it, but they just can't get out of their seat.
Yeah.
It's like they're waiting for people to come to them, and do that, and begin that networking process. What strategies or advice would you give that introvert, when they're trying to break into that networking world?
Yeah. First thing I'd say is, hey, this isn't going to help you right now, but everybody feels the same way. Everybody's feeling the same level of uncomfortability. Networking is and connecting is a skill set,
Right.
and it can be developed. Um, I would tell them to go where they're comfortable, to go where they're passionate. If they like to run, join a running club. If they like to golf, join a golf group, right? If they like whatever their passions are, like start there. Because guess what? That's easy because there's an innate passion that they want to do. Now, granted, if you're like, well, I'm in sales, like who am I going to sell in a
Who am
gardening
I going to
club?
hang out with in
Okay,
sales? Yeah.
right. So then I where go where you have existing clients. Everybody likes to go somewhere where there's an advocate in the room because
Right.
they can be like, because somebody at a different table can be like, oh, you know who you need to talk to? You need to talk to Mark, who's right over there. He's
Right.
awesome. Or better yet, he's at they're all at the same table, right? So go with people, go where you're comfortable. Um, so in the corporate alliance days, I moved to San Diego to run the San Diego franchise down there.
Okay.
And it was intimidating. We were losing so much money. So the pressure was high. And I didn't know anybody. So I'd show up to these happy hours and I'd be like, I do not want to be here. This is the last thing I want to do. And I
Yeah.
would just set goals and I'd be like, I need to talk with and make two connections that fit into like this type of individual. And then once I make two, I can go. And so you just have to make goals. And then when I would do that, I would be able to get like a fish taco on the way home. So I set goals and gave myself a reward, right? And
And
so then
there's
once
good
you
fish
start
tacos
build,
in San Diego.
oh yeah, and once you start building connections, I would then move it to, okay, I'm going to go make two new connections, and I'm going to make two reconnections. And then once I started building a few relationships, I'd go to these events and be like, all right, I know three people here. I'm going to go stand next to the people that I know. And if you've done a good job building those connections, they then start introducing you to everybody.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's what I would tell them.
Okay. And that's awesome. That's great advice because I think we both have seen those individuals, and I'll tell you, I've been the guy that's been the wallflower sometimes, especially when you show up to a new networking group
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're looking around going, how do I start this process? Right. I mean, I could get up and go stand on stage and say, hey, look at me. Right. But that's not likely going to happen unless my wife dares me or something like that. Um, and I'll tell you, she did dare me once. We were in the Midwest, something exactly along these lines. We went to a little restaurant in the town. We were in central Iowa, and we just went to a breakfast. And in this little town, all the farmers would go for coffee at this restaurant every morning. And we were new in town, and my wife looked at me and she dared me. She goes, I dare you to go over there and stand in front of that table and introduce yourself. All right. So I went up there and stood at the table and I literally said, thank you all for coming. I appreciate you being here today, and introduced myself like that. They thought I was a politician because it was so out of the ordinary. But I've done that wallflower thing where you're sitting on the side and you're just waiting and watching. So those are some really good tips. So for me, it's either I follow the tip or my wife dares me and then I got to do it.
That's a great piece of advice because the next tier, if someone's like, hey, I don't have a problem with networking, I just need to know how or where.
Yeah.
Um, that next level is, okay, well, where is your target demographic of who you want
Mm-hmm.
to build connections with, and go there. So many people will go and try to network in places where there's good people there, but it's not their target demographic of who they're trying to meet.
Right.
And so it's like, well, why, unless it's maybe a strategic partner or referral partner, or like there's many reasons why you can connect with somebody. It's not just a sell, but you need to go where those beneficial relationships will be.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just running that through my head as we're talking. So, um, can you give me an example in your career where authenticity had led to your success?
I'm gonna can I share a story? Somebody else.
Please do. Yeah, yeah.
The I had two real estate agents call me every month or quarter for like a year or two. And one of them, so that meant they both had phenomenal systems, right? That meant they were both phenomenal at follow up,
Right.
which meant they were both likely to be wildly successful. But one of them would call me, ask all the right questions, hey, how are you doing? At that time, how's Corporate Alliance? Yada, yada. And then finish the call with, hey, just wanted to give you an update on the market and ask if you know anyone or if you are looking to buy a house. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But his intent was clearly referrals, right? That was the
Mm-hmm.
top priority.
Right.
The other individual, real estate agent, would call me all the time, ask me how I was doing, and then be like, hey, I just helped a guy build or buy a house in a neighborhood that would be a great fit for Corporate Alliance. Or now he's still in TRUSS, for TRUSS. Let me introduce you. And it'd be like, who else are you working on? Can you give me their number? I will call them and tell them that they need to join. And so I'm like, oh, wow. No,
Yeah,
no
that's a
one's ever called
huge.
me to ask me that. And then I'm like, hey, I'm like, what can I do for you? He's like, oh, nothing. I'm just here to help you out. So when I, several years ago, went to go buy a home, which guy do you think I reached out to?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When my parents bought a home here, when my in-laws bought a home here, when my cousin bought a home here, who do you think I referred them to?
And absolutely. I'm going to assume it was option
Yeah,
two,
it
right?
was option two. And so that's just the power of authenticity. It's a slow play. It's a slow
Right.
play. There are some times where you need to do both, what option A did and what option B did, just to different types of people depending on who they are.
Yeah, I was going to say that comes into the who the person is and what level of connection you have with that person.
Or what level of connection you want with that person.
Yes.
Because here's the
Yeah.
thing, we can't be best friends with everybody. We
Nope.
just can't. We don't have enough time or resources, right? So
Or
what real estate
desire.
agent or desire, right? It's
Yeah.
exhausting. So what real estate agent number two did, he probably did for, I don't know, 30 people, 20 people, 50 people, and then like did other things for, a different tier of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's definitely an intriguing kind of thought process when it comes to that authenticity and networking. So,
Mark, let me share one
I
more thing there. Is
yeah,
the
please.
number one tactic in war is the number one tactic in relationship building. And that is to be unexpected,
Okay.
right? The element of surprise,
Right.
right? And that's because people are caught off guard. They're like, oh, what? Whoa, you actually did what you said you were going to do. You called me and offered me a referral and offered me to help my business. So then in return, over the next 5 years, I've helped you sell 5 houses. But it's like it's the art of doing something unexpected.
Yeah. If I could share a story with you right along
Yeah.
those lines, and it's and to this day, I bet if I could track this person down, I have to do is say, you know, a couple of words, and we'd laugh together, right? So years and years ago, I was selling advertising. You're just selling air is what I was selling, and I went out to a small town in eastern Utah, out in the Uinta Basin out there, and I happened to bump into this really really cool guy out in Vernal, Utah. It was Mr. S Clothing. His name was John Snyder. Became a good friend of mine. He and his family. But while we were sitting down visiting one day, he's like, "Mark, what you're doing is awesome. Here, let me give you a list of people that you can go call." And he actually called everybody, right? And I thought, as a sales guy, you're like, "This is amazing," and because that's the guy John was. And when you talk about unexpected, he sent me up to, there was a restaurant back then in Vernal, on the very western side of Vernal. As you pulled into that area, it was called Hog Heaven, and the menu was based off of Dukes of Hazzard. There was the Boss Hog Burger, and they just had all these fun names. And I remember going in, and I'm sitting here waiting for the owner, and I saw her sitting over there talking to, I found out later it was her uncle. But she was talking to him, and I heard him say to her, "Is that guy waiting for you?" And she said, and she didn't realize she'd said it loud enough, but she said, "Oh, it's just another dime a dozen sales guy." And I sat there and thought, okay, now we got to rethink the whole thing. And so she came over and she sat down and she did the cross her arms. She's leaning back, looking at me, and she goes, "Okay, what are you selling?" And I looked at her and I go, I'm not selling anything." She goes, "Wait, what?" And I said, "It's dinner time. I'm here to eat dinner." And she totally caught her off guard. And she said, "Oh, you're not?" I go, "No, no. What's good? Tell me what's good." So she got me dinner, right? I paid for dinner, and I left. And then I went back on another trip. It took about 6 months of working with her, and she finally sat down and she says, "Okay, I'm ready." And it turned into a really really fun thing because it shocked her so much. She said, "You were the first and only salesperson that ever met with me that ate at my restaurant when I told them I wasn't buying anything from them." And to me, that just baffled me, right? Why would they serve food? Let's have it. And so now, for years, when I would call out and talk to her, I would, hey, this is dime a dozen. And that's how she remembered. We just laughed every time. "Hey, this is dime a dozen," because she knew it was me. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is that, you've got to be, I knocked her a little off balance because I wasn't there at that moment. I changed what my thinking was. Instead, let's get to know her better and try her food and spend some time on that relationship. And then she eventually ended up becoming just one of my funnest customers.
That's cool. That's a perfect example, Mark.
So, yeah, every time we think about that every time sales conversations go along, she comes to my mind, because that, even though it was a little tiny sale, in the sense of I didn't make much money off of that deal, but it was the relationship that really, really hit home, and it was a fun one. And so, well, Logan, I just want to, first of all, I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to kind of start wrapping things up a little bit. And I appreciate you coming on, talking to us about authenticity and some of those key things to help us with networking, understanding how important that is, and how we approach that. So thank you so much. Do you, by chance, have any last piece of advice or motivational thought or anything like that when it comes to valuing relationships?
No one ever did it alone, right?
Yeah.
No one ever did it alone. And yeah, there's nothing, people bring you peace of mind. People bring you opportunities. Um, Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, people are the key.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more there. So, and thank you very much. And we will in the next little bit, just so that you know, as we talk about some of our upcoming episodes, we'll have this one up here in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But to give you an idea, for our listeners, I'll be having on here as well one of the best top emergency managers in the world. I'm actually meeting with later tomorrow, and kind of going through the connections that she sees in preparing and post disaster, and how important those connections are to the overall well-being of a community. And then we're going to be doing a series. We're going to start doing a series of different focuses, and I'll post those out there so everyone can see. The first one we're planning on doing is, it would be in June or July, depending on if I get the specialists that will be there that we can talk to about different areas of connections, and how everything from neurological connections down to our overall gut connections and how that happens with our body. I mean, it's just, everything's all connected in how our health works. And so I do want to give you a second, Logan, to just share with everyone how to, if those individuals at that C-suite area are interested in coming and joining TRUSS.
Yeah. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can find us at thetruss.com. Happy to chat. Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I so appreciate you, Logan. And everyone, remember to how important networks are, and how we can best. Logan, I love it when no one ever did it by themselves. So we got to make certain that we're working together. So thank you again, and hope everybody has an awesome day. And thanks for tuning into Double Helix.
Thank you, Mark.